A new dawn is arising in the region. Formerly under the grip of Western influence and power, particularly France, the Sahel region has taken a new turn. This is all thanks to the military leaders of the Sahel countries. Their departure from the old order has made other Sahel countries that used to be puppets of France to change as well. Recently, the president of Chad, Mahamat Idriss Deby, paid a visit to Burkina Faso's capital, Ouagadougou, where he met with President Traore. Both leaders engaged in mutual discussions regarding the future of both countries. But what entails their discussion? And what is the future of Chad and Burkina Faso's relationship? Let's find out. In 2021, Chad's former president, Idriss Deby, was killed in the battlefront from rebels shelling. After his death, President Macron himself was responsible for helping his son, who is now the current president of Chad, to take over power through a military coup. But he was not just responsible for the coup in secret. Macron endorsed it publicly, claiming that the military takeover was necessary for security reasons. Macron ignored the voice of the people and supported the current president's transition to power. This was because Macron needed to maintain French influence and military bases in the country. However, in the space of 3 years, everything changed. The president of Chad, Chad's political elites, and the ordinary citizens of Chad decided that it was time to take control of their country. Following the footsteps of the military leaders of the Sahel, Chad denounced the military agreement with France and sent French troops packing. Chad's decision was particularly humiliating for France because it was the only French military base in the Sahel region. President Macron was so pained that in early January he publicly came out to make a ridiculous statement. He said that he was still awaiting thanks from the Sahel states for Paris's efforts in preventing them from succumbing to militant control. Macron further added that France made the right decision to intervene in 2013 to combat Islamist militants, despite the fact that those countries have since distanced themselves from French military assistance. In his own words, "I think that they forgot to thank us, but that's okay. It will come in time." But we all know that these are just the words of a man who is pissed that some African countries would dare to humiliate France by kicking them out. Before we proceed, here is a reminder to like this video, drop a comment, and subscribe to our channel so that you can get more videos like this. In response, Chad rebuked Macron's statement and emphasized the need for French leaders to respect African sacrifices. In the statement published by the authorities in Chad, Macron was urged to leave African countries and focus on dealing with France's own problems. But here is where it gets interesting. A few days after this, the president of Chad was the subject of a failed assassination attempt. The attack happened on Wednesday night, January 8, 2025, in the capital city of Chad, N'Djamena. According to the government spokesman and foreign minister Abdulrahman Koulibaly, a group of 24 heavily armed men attacked the president's office at around 8:45 p.m. on Wednesday. The men were armed with knives, not guns, he said. At least 18 of the attackers were unalive in the ensuing gun battle, while one member of the Chadian security force also died. The incident took place while the Chadian president, Idriss Deby, was inside the palace following a meeting between Chadian leaders and the Chinese foreign minister, Wang Yi, who was in the country for a state visit. Videos of the aftermath of the shooting showed bloodied bodies on the floor, close to a white pickup truck. Koulibaly said the attackers were unalive after managing to penetrate the camp surrounding the presidency. "I was impressed by the military deployment. We have a very good army, and the Chadians can sleep soundly. Our country is well guarded," he said. According to the minister, at least 6 people have been arrested in connection with the attack, although it's unclear yet who they are and investigations are still ongoing. The fact that the attack occurred at the presidential palace when the president was in the meeting is a clear indication that he was the target. While an official statement has not been given regarding the attack, Takilal Ndolesem, national advisor and the president of the Front for the Liberation of Chad party, said something striking. He said the attack on January 8th was a result of France's resistance to Chad's independence. Takilal explained that France viewed Chad as a convenient free aircraft carrier and was unwilling to relinquish control. The politician further suggested that it was no accident that the French authorities exaggerated the significance of the attack, calling it a coup d'etat. He argued that the West often amplifies events to demonstrate their importance and influence, creating the impression that problems are unsolvable without their intervention. He said, "Today, everyone knows that the financing of terrorism comes from the West, since there are military leaders who have been arrested. And during their interrogation, they all said that they were financed by the West. With this, we clearly know who is behind the attack." However, Chad has not allowed this attack to make it falter on its decision. If anything, it has made Chad realize how necessary it is for it to achieve true independence and sovereignty. This is why the president of Chad paid a visit to President Traore of Burkina Faso. The Chadian president arrived at Ouagadougou on February 21, 2025. There, he was warmly greeted personally by President Traore. Traore even presented him with a traditional chapeau sapone hat, a cultural symbol of Burkina Faso recognized as a World Cultural Heritage item. The Chadian president is to attend the opening of the 29th Pan-African Film and Television Festival of Ouagadougou, FESPACO, where Chad is the guest of honor. According to the reports, both presidents have engaged in friendly discussions about the future of the relationship between both countries. In particular, they discussed their quest for true sovereignty, the fight against neo-colonialism, security challenges, and the development of genuine endogenous capacities in strategic areas. Both presidents welcomed the quality of the centuries-old relations of friendship, fraternity, and cooperation that bind their countries. They also agreed to speed up the establishment of a joint cooperation commission. The meeting ended with the Chadian president inviting President Traore for a visit. There is no doubt that both presidents would engage in more discussions and even sign bilateral deals before the Chadian president leaves Burkina Faso. Obviously, Chad and Burkina Faso have entered a new era of bilateral relations, which makes sense because both countries have a lot in common. Like Burkina Faso, Chad is fighting towards true independence. And given the fact that Burkina Faso is already on that path, it makes absolute sense that the president of Chad seeks to deepen relations with Burkina Faso. At this point, it is clear that the next course of action is for Chad to join the Alliance of the Sahel. Chad is a part of the Sahel region, which has been the center of severe insecurity caused by Islamist jihadists for years. Unfortunately, despite the presence of French forces and other foreign military forces in the region, the insecurity continued to persist. However, now that Chad has kicked out French forces and severed ties with France, joining the AES will be the logical thing to do. This is a similar sentiment echoed by Yusuf Adam Abdallah, the Chadian specialist in international security, defense, and African cooperation. According to him, joining the AES would be one of the best alternatives to address the eternal security concern for Chad. He noted that the joint military force to fight terrorist groups created by Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso in March 2024 could further assist Chad in resolving regional conflicts. The interesting thing is that this joint force has been redefined into what is now called the AES Joint Force, and it numbers a whopping 5,000 soldiers, all fit and ready to be deployed. The Chadian expert also noted that given that Chad is already a member of several other security confederations with Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso, it is therefore in the interest of Chad and the Chadian people that Chad join the AES force. He further advocated that Chad should withdraw from the Multinational Joint Task Force, MNJTF, headquartered in N'Djamena. This joint force was created by Nigeria, Cameroon, Niger, Benin, and Chad in order to jointly combat the Boko Haram terrorist group. However, according to the expert, the Multinational Joint Task Force is not effective because the Boko Haram sect is wanted and maintained by other powers in complicity with African states for hidden agendas. However, unlike the MNJTF, the Alliance of the Sahel was created to combat the insecurity in the region. And, since its formation, members of the AES have committed to developing the bloc to ensure that it fulfills its objective. On December 31, 2024, President Traore, in his New Year's speech, declared that the AES belongs to all Africans who desire sovereignty, independence, and total freedom. He said that the alliance was not created for only Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso, but for all African countries that desire freedom and independence from the West. According to Captain Ibrahim Traore, the AES is called upon to become a strong union in all areas, and particularly with regard to diplomacy, defense, security, and above all, development. President Traore further added, "Several actions are currently underway to be able to structure this alliance and establish it because it is the beginning of a union in sovereignty, in total freedom, so that Africa can take an example from this alliance and be able to shine." Now, one such structure was the formation of the Alliance of New Logos. The logo was unveiled together with the new AES Web TV by the three ministers in charge of communications in the Confederation of Sahel States. During the event, which began on December 27, 2024 in Bamako, Mali, the ministers in charge concluded a process to create a visual identity for the AES Confederation. Over the course of 3 days, experts from the region's member countries developed documents for effective communication that should increase the visibility of AES actions. Several logo options were proposed at the national level as part of the meeting's recommendations. However, the final version eventually approved by the heads of state is a circle with the words Confederation of Sahel States on a red background. The new logo included an emblem with the slogan, "One space, one people, one destiny." 3 stars were chosen to symbolize the 3 countries, Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso. The sun and baobab symbolize life and diversity, while the silhouettes of people symbolize the diversity and interdependence of the peoples of the Sahel. The AES Web TV, on the other hand, was created to counter the fake news published by Western media. This announcement followed the closure of several French media outlets, including France 27 in the 3 countries. According to an official of Mali's Department of Communication, the AES bloc is faced with disinformation campaigns, and thus Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger have decided to take the lead by creating a new communication platform. The Web TV is part of a broader strategy aimed at strengthening the credibility of the AES on the international scene. In simple terms, the military leaders of Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso are fed up with the narrative constantly pushed by Western media, which has made many in the international scene regard them as bad news. So the formation of Web TV is an attempt to change the narrative in the international scene and to ensure that their voice is heard. At the end of the event, the ministers expressed their satisfaction with the rapid results of the experts' work and promised to implement new tools for the benefit of the citizens of the Confederation. The ceremony ended with applause, emphasizing the hope that the AES space is now equipped with tools to disseminate reliable information and raise awareness. Now, with this, it is clear that the Alliance of the Sahel State is truly committed to its independence and freedom. And this is something that is important for African unity. President Traore has extended an invitation to all African presidents to join the AES. Now here is the big question. What makes the AES different from ECOWAS? The founding purpose of ECOWAS in 1975 was to promote economic integration and improve the standard of living. But take a look at all the 15 member countries that make up ECOWAS. Does it look like the standard of living has been improved? Instead, each of these countries are faced with a staggering debt burden, low standard of living, poor infrastructures, and high rate of poverty. The masses in all these countries are suffering terribly from the bad decisions made by leaders whom they did not elect and who are the leaders of ECOWAS. Aside from promoting free trade and free movement among the member countries, what exactly has ECOWAS done in its 49 years of existence? Defenders of ECOWAS would say that the bloc has had some success in protecting and deepening peace, stability, and democracy, which is part of its objective for promoting economic integration, and they are correct. In April 2012, for example, it negotiated the restoration of constitutional rule in Mali after the ousting of President Amadou Touré in a military coup. In September 2015, after a military putsch in Burkina Faso, ECOWAS facilitated the return of interim President Michel Kafando. In January 2017, it secured a democratic transition of power in the Gambia after longtime leader Yahya Jammeh, who had lost the December 2016 presidential election to current President Adama Barrow, tried to unlawfully remain in office. The question, however, still remains, how has ECOWAS helped in regional stability? Take a look at the Sahel, a part of West Africa. Does it look like it's stable? Aside from being known for its high level of poverty and poor level of development, The countries in the Sahel are currently known as the most dangerous places to visit because of the high level of insecurity. Jihadists and armed rebels have turned the Sahel into their playground, leading to the death of millions of people and the displacement of far more. Now, as a regional power, what exactly has ECOWAS done? The answer is nothing. Since the crisis in the Sahel began in 2013, the bloc has not offered to use its collective resources to help the situation. Maybe if it had, the insecurity would not be as prominent as it is. Without mincing words, Ibrahim Traore, President of Burkina Faso, is right in saying that one of the reasons for withdrawing from the bloc is that ECOWAS has not offered to help combat the insecurity facing the Sahel countries. Now let's talk about democracy. Defenders of the bloc would say that ECOWAS has been instrumental in promoting democracy, but is that truly correct? Does promoting democracy only mean taking a strong stance whenever there is a military takeover? What about constitutional coups when civilian governments manipulate the constitution to extend their stay in power? It happened in Guinea in 2020, allowing Alpha Condé to rule for a third term until he was ousted by the military. The same year, Ivorian President Alassane Ouattara also secured a controversial third term in office after he won the October 31st presidential election, an election which everybody knows was not free and fair. In all this, how did ECOWAS respond to the situation? Were sanctions placed on Guinea and Ivory Coast? Of course not. ECOWAS didn't even say anything tangible. Yet when it comes to military coups, that's when ECOWAS seems to have the power to defend democracy. Democracy is not just about elections, but also about the people having the power to choose leaders who would represent their interests. Yet, ECOWAS, which supposedly defends democracy, has never responded to the elections in West African countries which have never been free and fair. More often than not, election results are manipulated, and the people also end up with leaders whom they did not choose and who will lead them to greater despair. The current president of Nigeria, Bola Tinubu, who is also the leader of ECOWAS, is a good example of a president that was not the people's choice. And today, Nigerian citizens are suffering from it. Speaking of military coups, the different ways ECOWAS responded to the coups which occurred in 5 different countries in the region again proves how double standards and biased the bloc has become. When the coups occurred in Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, ECOWAS immediately responded with sanctions, suspension from the bloc, and even threatened to military intervene in Niger. But what was their response in Chad? Aside from a mere statement condemning Chad, what else did ECOWAS do? Nothing. This is because the coup in Chad had the backing of France. So tell me, was Ibrahim Traore not correct when he said that ECOWAS has become a puppet of foreign interest? He certainly was. The only reason why ECOWAS threatened to militarily intervene in Niger was because France, the USA, and the international community were backing the decision. So with all these, it is quite clear that the African dream of African unity can never be achieved with these blocs. But what about the AES? The Alliance of the Sahel was formed in May 2024 by Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso to pool development efforts between the 3 member countries and help them counter terrorist insecurity and external subversion. The great thing about this bloc is that the 3 countries believe in the same ideals and principles. For example, the 3 countries prioritize the sovereignty of their countries above everything. This is why they kicked out French forces, ended diplomatic relations with France, and distanced themselves from the West in general. The 3 countries have moved closer to non-Western allies including Russia, China, Turkey, and Iran. The leaders of the 3 countries are resolute and determined in their decisions. Despite the sanctions imposed on them by the regional bloc, ECOWAS, and the West, they have stood by their decision. The AES bloc believes in African unity, and this is why the 3 member countries have pooled their resources together to fight the insecurity in the region. In addition to this, the 3 countries have focused on prioritizing economic independence and nationalizing their resources. This is the reason why Mali, for example, is pursuing an aggressive negotiation strategy to ensure that Mali benefits massively from its gold resources. Burkina Faso, on the other hand, has suspended gold exports and is developing its gold mining industry with the establishment of a gold refinery. Niger has kicked out Orano, the French company that dominated its uranium industry. All these actions are what true Pan-African leaders would take to ensure the sovereignty and independence of their countries. Just imagine that all African leaders join the AES bloc under the leadership of President Traore. There is no doubt that things will definitely change. Unlike the African Union and the ECOWAS bloc that depend on external findings, the AES is completely financially independent. This means that it is free to make whatever decisions it wants to make, even if it means going against the interest of the West. With all this, it is clear that joining the AES is Chad's best option for solving its crisis. What are your thoughts? Let us know in the comments section below. Don't forget to like this video, drop a comment, and share.